Every creature in the universe that is in any way sensitive and in any manner of speaking conscious regards itself as a human being. That is to say, it knows and is aware of a hierarchy of beings above it and a hierarchy of beings below it. If you take such a tiny creature as a fruit fly, which lives only a few days, it is aware of all sorts of weird little animals and objects and spores floating in the atmosphere which we don't even notice unless we've got a microscope around, and very few people have. And it criticizes them as being inferior animals and all that sort of thing, whereas human beings are things that it doesn't comprehend. They're as much outside its intellect as a quasar is outside ours. And we see these far-off objects floating in the heavens, and we have only the vaguest idea of what they may be. But there is, I think, a fundamental principle that everybody must understand in order to know what is the meaning of the Tao, or the Chinese sense of the course of nature, and that is the principle of relativity. That is to say that wherever you are, and whoever you are, and whatever you are, you're in the middle. You know, pig in the middle. That's the game. And you see, just in the same way as when you stand, say, on the deck of a ship, and you can see a horizon all around you to exactly the same distance. You're in the center of a circle, because your senses extend a certain direction, in all directions, and therefore give you the impression of being in the middle. Now, everything in the world feels like that. And also it has its own kind, which look natural to it. The sensation of a certain tension which constitutes the feeling of I-ness, of there-ness, of being here. Because after all, every creature is a particular form. Everything is individual. Not only you as a total organism standing here, but all the component cells of your body. Each one of them has some sort of a feeling of its own. And it is individual. You can look at a microscope at the right level of magnification, and you can see that thing there with its own little life. And if you examine the stream of your blood, you'll find it full of all kinds of organisms that are having all sorts of conspiracies and games and plots and eating each other and doing these things that like we do. Only we realize that we wouldn't be healthy as a total organism unless there were all these wars and fights and plots and politics going on between the various cells in our blood. Each one of us retains a peculiar individuality. Almost in the same way as nothing could be more unlike a stomach than a heart, and nothing could be more unlike a kidney than a pituitary gland. You see, there's a lot of differentiation inside the body, despite the fact that it is an organism functioning altogether. There is then this sensation of practically every living being of constituting a center of tension and of resistance. That is to say, of being a little bit blocked, or shall I say, of being in the way, being in one's own way. Imagine the opposite. Let us suppose, for example, that you got up in the morning with a feeling of total transparency. There's no resistance in your organism to the external world. You just float through it. You're part of it, it's part of you. And just in the same way, for example, that when you see, if you see well, you aren't aware of your eyes. But if there's something wrong with your eyes, and you see spots in front of you, then you are looking at your eyes, and your eyes are getting in your own way. So the Taoist sage Zhuangzi says that when clothes fit well, you are not aware of them. When your girdle or belt fits properly, you are not aware of it. Good shoes you're unconscious of. And so in exactly the same way, the perfect form of man is unaware of himself, because he doesn't get in his own way. He is thus, in this sense, completely transparent. Now you were thinking I'm trying to sell you a bill of goods, that I'm going to teach you some technique so that you can feel perfectly transparent, and that this is the proper way to feel, this is the way you ought to feel. Now, it's not that simple. Point is, to begin with, if you do, in a really rather natural way, feel alone, and feel a little bit vulnerable, that you've got a soft skin, and you've got a weak heart, and you've got all those ills that the human body is heir to going on inside you. Let's begin with that. Let's begin with the way in which we do in fact constitute a sort of block in the middle of things. And that fact we hurt a bit. And through hurting a bit we know we're here. See, people go very often to extreme measures to know that they're there. I was in Mexico 2 years ago. I'm trying to find out what was really behind all the blood and gore in Mexican Catholicism. Why they love these pictures of Christ that are sold in the little shops where he's green and his face is contorted with horror and blood pouring down and a crown of thorns and all that kind of thing. And then at Guadalupe, these girls kneeling walking for a mile right down the avenue to the altar in that thing. What is it all about? Why, the answer is quite simply, if you hurt, you know you're there. This is part of the whole meaning of penances and all sorts of trials that people go through and all kinds of adventures. Every kind of variety of differentiation is the way through which unity is discovered. And the fact that men and women, for example, as a primordial kind of difference, never can really understand each other is tremendously exciting, because that's a way by which something happens. If it makes a difference, then it's there. If it doesn't make a difference, it doesn't matter. And what doesn't matter doesn't exist, because it has no matter. So, however, it is wherever you notice a difference, the difference has two sides, what it is and what it's not. And these two sides, since you can't have the one side without the other side, they're really one, because they go together, inseparably. So when you get this extreme sense of your own existence as a rather painful fact in the middle of everything else, the everything else feeling and the you feeling are two poles of one and the same process. So that the real you is what lies between these poles and includes both of them. Now, this is the fundamental principle of the whole way in which ancient Chinese thought developed. The philosophy of the yang and the yin. The universe is the interplay of difference, and the primordial difference is between up and down, back and front, black and white, is and isn't, male and female, positive and negative. So the word yang in Chinese means the south side of a mountain, which is the sunny side. The word yin refers to the north side of the mountain, which is the shady side. Did you ever see a south-sided mountain only with no north side? Or it may also, yang may refer to the north bank of a river, which gets the sun, and yin to the south bank of the river, which gets the shade. And so you will remember this great symbol, and one half, of course, is colored dark, as it were two fishes interlocked, and they are chasing each other. Just like if I want to see the back of my head, I can go round and round and I can chase it, but I never quite catch up with it. But that's what makes everything work. It is said in the Vedanta Sutras that the Lord, the supreme knower of all things, who is the knower in all of us, doesn't know itself, in the same way that fire doesn't burn itself and a knife doesn't cut itself. So nothing to God, even, you see, would be more mysterious than God. That's why there has to be yang and yin. Yang is bright and it understands everything. Yin is dark and damned if she'll be understood. And so your yang side is your conscious attention and all the bright things you know and all the information you have and all the know-how and that you know what to do. And your yin side is the other side of the yang, which enables the yang to function, because you don't know why the yang side of you functions. That is the conscious, bright, intelligent side of you. It all depends on something you don't understand at all. Because if it didn't, it wouldn't be there. Just like you wouldn't be here unless there was something else. Now therefore, by a little extension of the imagination, you can very well see that if all those bones and subtleties inside you feel other than your conscious ego, but nevertheless are one with it, the same argument will go for all the other things going on around you. The sun shining, the stars twinkling, the wind blowing, and the great ocean restlessly pounding against these cliffs. That's you too. You don't control it, of course, because there has to be something about you you don't control, or you wouldn't be you. I see that, all that is less than elementary relativity.